Amanda, where you at?
Hey Keith, I'm just at home, but where are you? Where have you been? Are you going somewhere right now? Looks like you're parked, thankfully.
I'm parked right now. I told you earlier that if I'm moving, that would be what the attorneys call evidence. So I'm sitting still. So
Well, thanks for being safe.
yeah, yeah. I think one of my challenges in life is my attention span. I have like the attention span of a squirrel or a gnat maybe, and so when I'm doing things, it takes all my energy to be locked and loaded. And I was in Bloomington, which we talked about my trip to Bloomington a few weeks ago, and having lunch with a client friend, and this person at the outdoor table next to us just kept interrupting me, and it made it
That's
really
not good.
hard.
Yeah,
No, it
for
made it
sure.
hard for somebody with my personality to stay focused on the conversation at hand. And so finally, I was like having this internal battle, like, do I get rude or how do I stop the interruption? So I thought, what if I just engage him for a second or two, and then maybe he'll talk himself out and I can focus on my client. So once I started engaging him, he said that the pizza we were having is good pizza. I go, this is good pizza? He said, yeah, this is good pizza. And I'm like, where are you from? And he said, New York City. And I was like, wow, this is good pizza? He goes, yeah, this is good pizza. I go, well, tell me this, what's New York City like? And he said, it's like Armageddon. And I'm like, really? And we talked a little bit more about that. And then on my drive back from Bloomington to Indianapolis, I just kept pondering New York City. And guess what?
What?
A road trip needed to be made to New York City because I couldn't get my mind off of it. So it was probably a week and a half later, I was in New York City. And
Wow.
I've been to New York City plenty of times for my lifetime. And what was different this time, that drive from Bloomington to Indianapolis, it caused me to wonder about the people of New York City. I hadn't really given city folks much thought, and it occurred to me that, I live on about a quarter of an acre, which isn't a farm field, but that's much more than anybody in New York City has. And so that trip up there from Bloomington back home caused me to wonder, like, what have all these folks been doing for these last 6 months? And had you
Yeah,
thought about that before?
I had, and a place like New York City is something that I've wondered if it's going to be able to recover. And I've been wondering what it's looking like there. I've heard of the amount of people that have left. It would be hard for me to imagine that you could be cooped up by yourself in like a 400 square foot apartment and could not leave. So I have been
Yeah.
wondering, but what did you see out there?
Well, a lot of that I was really puzzled by. I talked to a client this week who lives in a large city, and their condominium has dropped in value by 30% since the COVID has started. And so my gut feeling is this could be very detrimental to cities. But why don't I talk about my ride out there, and then we do this again, and I'll tell you about my stop in the city and my return trip home. And so my whole motivation to go out there was just compassion for the folks of New York City, as I really wanted to see what it is they're going through and have some empathy for their situation, because I haven't been locked in. I am sitting at my normal park where I go running very frequently, ready to go for my afternoon run right now. And I suppose they didn't have that flexibility during the early parts of it. I didn't go through Central Park, but I didn't sense that Central Park was closed either now. So, but anyway, we headed out towards the city. I called somebody who lived in the city, and they didn't want to see me. And that suggested that's not a very good statistical subset, but it suggested to me that the anxiety level there might be a lot higher than it is here in central Indiana. And that was kind of what I gathered from the whole trip too, is that the anxiety level in New York City was much higher than other places. As we decided to travel as few of the interstates as possible. So we took Highway 36 up around Anderson. We took that out of Indiana towards Ohio and up north of Columbus. And then I think we finally jumped on an interstate somewhere northeast of Columbus for the afternoon. But as we were going through the country roads, one of the things I observed was that there were help wanted signs all along the path through Ohio. It was really kind of amazing to me, and several of them were so aggressively looking for work that they actually had the hourly wage, and they were right in the $20 to $25 an hour wage for jobs that they look like they would hire you today. So
wow.
It brought encouragement to me that there are jobs out there. It may not be the job that somebody would, carve up in a perfect world that this is what I want to do, but there's $20 to $25 an hour jobs available today in Ohio. I assume they're around here, but I hadn't seen the signs as aggressive as what I noticed in Ohio. I noticed, compared to central Indiana, the people in Ohio, relative to when I was there, they seem to be less mask conscientious than Hoosiers were. There seemed to be a fewer probability of people wearing masks. And coincidentally, as I've sensed the same thing about Pennsylvania as well. I didn't sense as much of a mask coverage in Pennsylvania as I had in Indiana. So that was interesting. As we were going across Ohio and Pennsylvania, it just seemed that the traffic wasn't overly aggressive in the number of cars that were out there like I would have ordinarily expected. So you could tell the traffic was down a bit. We weren't sure what New York City was going to be like, and some of my family members were concerned for my well-being, and so I opted to not go into the city after dark and to leave before dark. And so we decided to find a hotel west of New York City. We decided about 2 hours in a little town called Hazleton, Pennsylvania. It was a Hilton brand hotel. I don't remember what it was. And I think I've told you before, what I've noticed in my travels is that the hotels are fairly inexpensive right now. And this one was $100 a night and included a breakfast. It was a brand new hotel basically. And they had the hotels COVID proofed with all the things that included, but they had something unique that I hadn't seen somewhere else. They had a blue Hilton seal. There was a seal on the door, and then one on the door post at a 90-degree angle there. And so it suggested that when the house cleaning came through, that room was clean and secure and ready for you. And so as you open the door, it breaks that seal. And that's the first hotel I've ever seen that. I don't know if that's the way it's going to be. Have you been to a hotel like that?
No. Yeah. And I haven't been to a hotel since COVID happened. And that's really interesting. I had no idea that they were doing stuff like that. Might be the new normal.
I bet it might be. We traveled right before COVID, and I was out in Arizona prior to COVID, and there was a special cleanliness room that somehow I got put in on that stay, and I don't remember what all they did in that room, but it was beyond what my personal needs are. But it was the first time I'd noticed hotels really focusing on the cleanliness factor, which I think we talked about this in some of our other conversations, is that the higher end travel hotels like the Hiltons that are along the exits versus the lower end exit hotels, the parking lots were a lot fuller on those that were a little higher quality. And so I think the cleanliness factor is going to probably dictate the consumer activities going forward. But that'll get you all the way to 2 hours from New York City. You'll have to come back next time, Amanda, to find out what was going on in New York City.
I will do. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye.